Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on this lovely Tuesday, Too Much Technology and Too Little Time, with our good friend Matt Evans. We're super excited to have you all today. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We are going to be using iClicker for this session to let Matt get some feedback from you guys as we go through and to keep things interactive and engaged. So you can join iClicker using the link that is posted right there on the screen. It is join.iclicker.com. And once you get to that screen, you can input the code J7V6T. I will also put this in the chat for you guys, a direct link for you to go to if you'd like to join the course. Once you get to that screen, it'll prompt you that if you haven't created a student account to participate before, you can create one, or if you have, you can just log in and it'll go straight into the course. That'll allow you to participate directly on the website if you want to. Alternatively, if you've already downloaded the iClicker Reef app onto your phone, you can click to open that and participate there if you want to. So feel free to throw any questions in the chat as you're working through that. And I will put this link in the chat in just a second too. A couple more housekeeping items. Everybody is on mute to keep down on the background noise going on in the background. But that said, this should be interactive. Anytime iClicker's open, feel free to ask a question and give your feedback. Also, there's the questions panel or the chat panel that you can send questions through. I'm here to answer them. Also, Matt will be taking questions throughout the presentation. So if you think of something at the time that he's going over it, feel free to put your question through and I'll stop Matt and ask him a question. We'll also have a little bit of time at the end. Most popular question I always get is, are we recording? And the answer is yes, we are recording. So you'll receive a copy of this within a day or so with a copy of Matt's slides as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenter today, Matt Evans. Dr. Matt Evans has been teaching physics for over 20 years at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, often exploring new techniques and technologies that can enhance the classroom experience for students, including online homework systems and pre- and post-lecture support videos. For the past 15 years, he's been using iClicker systems in his classrooms, often beta testing new instructor-driven features to help make them serve instructors and students in their classrooms and beyond. So he is a perfect candidate for today to talk about this problem of, there are too many technology options and too little time. How do we solve this problem? So I'm going to quit sharing right now, and I'm going to pass the ball over to Matt. Just one second. Let's get here. Okay, Matt, you are now the presenter.
Okay, all right, is that my screen showing?
It is not showing yet, it doesn't look like.
Okay, this is the brand new technology, of course, of
yeah, you're so used to Zoom. We're on GoToWebinar.
Right, exactly. And so I am clicking on things and it's oh, here we go. It's hidden, of course. Think that's
okay.
Going now?
Yeah, we're seeing your presenter mode, not the slides.
Okay.
Seeing your note.
All right. This is where now I'm. Okay. If you could send that back to me, and then we'll start it up again.
Yes, we'll do. There you go. All right, perfect.
All right. So just I've already been introduced, but one of the things is I've been teaching physics for over 20 years, and I really still love it. And one of the things that I always bring to any of the classes that I give at my university is I always look at how are the students changing and how am I changing? And my father taught for 40 years, and he said that if you ever think that you have canned a course and you never have to make changes, you're done teaching. And I think that's really been one of the steadying features of what I've done in this last year, which is critically look at what's really important for what I do when I'm with my students and how I can get them to get on board with the educational process that I'm trying to craft for them. So one of the, we've been inundated with all these technology things, and I use a multitude of things, and I'll show a few of those. But the very first one is just showing how I can start a class and, okay, there's no questions, and this seems like a neat way to start the class. So when I walk into my classroom, every day I throw this up onto the screen and they get the chance to interact with me, and they either say no or they have questions. And so instead of that awkward, asking out, all right, who has a question, and no one really wants to ask, and then you move on, and all of a sudden, half the class wanted to know something, but they were a little too timid to ask. And what this also does is it gives me a very confined way to get information coming in, but only when I actually want that information to come in. So it's just a really nice and easy way to use this polling feature that they have. All right, so when I start thinking about my teaching, this is what fancy technology meant when I started to teach. It was high tech because it was colored chalk and we had transparencies, and today we've kind of exploded with all sorts of technologies and different ways to teach and different ways to get those students to interact. But I still want to always think, what is it doing for me? So when I start looking out and you think of the multitude of things that are being foisted upon us, and there's learning management systems and MOOCs and all sorts of different ways that we can present material, we have to always step back and think, what is it that I need the students to be doing in order to get the material in a way that's helpful to them, and especially in these days, fits the way that we're teaching. So whether it be synchronous, hybrid, where some people are in the room, some people aren't, or all in person, there's always some sort of technology. So one of my favorites is we just had a discussion about Chegg today, which is a search engine for problems in physics, where you can basically find any problem that's ever been done in any book ever and get the solution. And I basically tell them you can do that, but that's a technology that is not helpful to them. So once I started to think about it, is how do you choose? How do you figure out what it is that you want to do and which technologies are going to help you? So what I want to do is just go through and do another little short answer and have you answer, what do you need from your technology? So this is going to go into that Clicker app or web browser that you set up. Give you a minute to answer. And one of the things is you can see on that I have 4 responses, 5 responses, 8 responses. These are coming in real time, and I actually have a window that I can actually be seeing those answers come in. This does come with a little desktop thing that would scroll through. I also have an app on my phone where I can just start reading them off. Integration, ease of use for me and the students, easy to learn, easy to use, works consistently. I need it to work. That is, I think, I think that is one of the banes of our existence is we walk in with these grand plans of doing something wonderful. And if that first thing that you do pulls that technology away from you, and that was everything, then you're sort of sunk in the water. And so flexibility from both sides makes it less work instead of more work, student feedback and efficiency. So I'm getting all of these while you're putting those in, and I can start thinking about, well, what am I going to do next? I'm actually in front of a board. If I wanted to, I could turn on my webcam and start, diagramming out all of these responses. And so every single person is going to, in my class, they're all going to be able to answer some question, and that brings them into the conversation. And so, I didn't see anyone, ask. I mean, I'm going to try this because I love this idea. At this point, I'm going to stop it. Usually I'd give you a little warning, but I think we have this where I can see and scroll through all of the answers that we have, but I want to do a word cloud. And so when I just go to this word cloud, I can see easy, work, ease, so I can actually see what's going on sort of in that big picture. As well as going back and looking at the responses. And as you can see, the ease of work, working consistently, easy, flexible. Those are consistent with all teachers. We don't want something that's too complex. So when I start to think about the software that I'm using, and I can actually take this. This is my iClicker sort of. I can make that disappear for a second, so it's out of sight, out of mind. But I want to have the software actually do the lifting for me. I want anything that I use to help me or help the students, and hopefully both. So when I start to plan out what I want to do for a class, there's always the learning management system, and we have to use Canvas. We used to use Brightspace or D2L, and whatever the university says we're going to use, that's what we use. But then I think, how do I integrate what I need in my class into that? So when I look at the two yellow arrows that I have on here, I have an online homework system that it's called Achieve, and it does a little bit of lecturing, pre-lectures, some quizzing, and then it has a homework. And that actually can be automatically input into my Canvas course. So I just have to kind of set up the class, and all those scores go into Canvas. Same thing is true with iClicker. Once I set up the system, the students it's really easy for them to be integrated between the Canvas class and iClicker. And once that's done, all of the iClicker grades get uploaded into Canvas. Now, the two things that I do sort of on the side are those presentations. I upload my slides from the class, and then I use a tablet to work through a bunch of solutions in physics, which is, I roll the ball down a ramp, and if it has this mass and it's going this fast at the bottom, how much energy does it have? And I'll work through those with a video rather than just like a solution printed in a book to kind of narrate themselves through those problems. So I think of how does all that technology help the student? And then because I'm doing a hybrid where students are in class or they can be online if they're sick, I just turn on Zoom and kind of leave that alone. But I think of this as I'm crafting my class, and as you said, easy is important. And one of the things with those yellow arrows that I think is really important and has gotten, is one of the real reasons to use what I would say mature software is people have worked on integrations where, like in Canvas, if I link my course in Canvas to iClicker, iClicker will say, here's all the people that already have an account, and here's all the people that don't. And they'll actually, you're able to email out the people who don't have an account and tell them to sign up for one with one click. So these mature systems are actually much easier to use in that the integration, you're not spending the first 3 weeks trying to onboard people. So that's one of the things that I think robust technologies do much better than things like, you could have Kahoots, which is great for what it's used for, but it's not really good for the things that maybe I would be using that for. So this whole idea of so much technology and so little time is seriously thinking through how it can help you. So one of the things that we can go on and look at is, this is one of the slides that they talk about, which is how can a simple system that your students are just answering questions help you? And in this case, students, because I give credit for it, I have 5% of my work is just answering questions. The students are all allowed to answer. That's one of the things that's I think critical is we're so used to that kid in the front row that knows every answer, and it makes you feel good, but they were going to be a good student without you. So when I start thinking about what I need to do is I need to lift up that bottom quartile into the middle, and I need to get that middle to always be active. The people who are on top are going to be good anywhere. The other thing about the iClicker, especially for me, is I've done some other seminars on this, is I have taught long enough that I know which questions I can ask and get about 50% correct. And what's really nice about that is in real time, students are seeing whether they're right or not, and it's opening them up to the idea of why they're wrong or even why they're right, and giving them a more robust solution to that. So just this idea that answering questions, which is really easy in a system like this, the students are getting something out of just thinking through and coming up with their solution and then seeing if they're right. And it's it allows me to actually change the way that I teach in real time. If I get a question where it's 20% for all the answers, that's a teaching moment where I may give a quick little mini lecture and then just ask the question again. So students, you're breaking up your course, and these days I used to do just 3 questions, maybe 5. Because of the way that things are set up, I do 8 questions a day now, because it's the one time I know that they're really interacting. And so it's one of the things of breaking down your classes, stopping. In fact, I feel like I've talked enough already. So one of the things that I want to do is just ask a simple question like this. So here I change it to multiple choice, and I can start that question. So now that's being sent out to everyone. Now, if I'm in a room, they'd be there to answer that in real time. They can use a physical clicker, they use their phone, they use a web browser. And one of the things that I like about this is I am doing all sorts of things at this point that you don't have to worry about as a student. So when I ask this question, it's how are you using this? I usually ask, are you in person today or are you online? And what that does is once they answer A, I know that they've attended. And for those of you who have dealt with administrators, they want you to track attendance in some way. For me, I look through my attendance at the end of every week, and anyone who's missed 2 of the 3 days gets an email from me. I also have to fill out financial aid reporting. And after the first week and after the 5th week, we have to send in who's still attending. And we have to show which is the last day they attended. And all of that is actually done just by asking a single question. So today, when I look at this, hey, wow, look at that. Half of you are in a web app and half of you are using your online. And what's nice is, oh, it shows me an immediate response, and I can then play off of that. If this was part of my class, I could actually start talking about that. And as you can say, you are all much better students than mine, because there would always be some screwball who would choose C, I am not interacting today. And of course, it was always for that laugh, but it is, I oftentimes will show that changing your answer takes, even though it's online, it takes less than a second to change your answer and then have it show up on my screen. So this is just an example of how I can easily take attendance data just by asking a simple question. And for us, contact tracing is really big right now. So I need to know who was in the room that day, and since they kind of have assigned seats, I'll know who has to be notified in case something happens. And knock on wood, we have not had a case in our classrooms that I have heard about this year. So, all right. So a couple other things. One of the things that I keep thinking about is how have we evolved as teachers? And this is one of these pictures. I was thinking about this. This is almost when I started teaching, but not quite. But they're, you know, you're all front facing, you're all watching the one person give out that information. But our classrooms look very different now. And on the left, this is basically, I'm actually still having them talk to each other if they're close enough. And on the right, some people are by themselves at home answering questions, but I know that they're at least interacting with that material. And it allows me to have these different types of interactions regardless of how the student had to be in the class that day. Now, my hope is that they're always there in person, and in the fall we can have the conversations, and I can look into their eyes and see how they're doing. But at this point, I'm still getting a lot of feedback. So this is actually my my classroom. It is the fanciest classroom that I've ever been in. I keep requesting a spot, but no one will turn on the spotlight on me. But I get 50 students, and on an average day, I'll get 38 scattered about the auditorium, as you can see. I have 6 online and 6 are absent. And I know that consistently because I can just look at that. And everyone can participate, at least in this, wherever they are, because the system, it floats over anything. So I'm not going to have you actually answer anything, but if I hit that start button and stop button, this picture of this screen was, that picture was taken and it was sent to your phone, and you can see that as a question. So it doesn't matter what you're presenting, as long as you take a screenshot of that, whatever's on your screen, you're going to be able to send that out. And so that's when you talk about ease of use. I know people that have used Prezi, they've used one of the quote Luddites in my department uses a Word document. So every page is a separate question, and he just scrolls up by page every time he asks a different question. And it takes a screenshot of that and sends that out to the students. So one of the nice things about a technology like this is it does bring them in, but it also allows them to, allows you as the instructor to have that ease of use, where once you set it up and you start it, it's a matter of just clicking that button and selecting the type of question that you want. All right, so this is actually, I was just thinking, if I go back a slide, this is one of the types of questions. I'm going to send that out, and what I want you to do is, if you have your phone or your web browser, click on where you would sit if this was your classroom. So it's showing a technology, not so much a great question, but in my case of physics, I could have something where does the particle have the greatest potential energy, or where in the world is there infighting because of the arms deal with Saudi Arabia? You know, things like that, where you can actually have something up on your screen. It's and then they just click on it. So as I look for these responses, and I will, I can see this person in the upper level as close to the door as possible. That's where I would have sat as a student. But you can see how this helps you have a question type that gives you a lot of information about how they feel about X, or how they understand some material, and you can actually get these answers so they're not seeing them in real time, but oftentimes I would just close that and then show those answers. And that helps them see whether they had it right or wrong, if it's a real question, or how the other people are dealing with that class. And there is a sense that we're missing when we're not together in classes, where students, even if they're socially distanced, like in this picture, there is this common community that they feel when they're in the class with other students. They pay attention more, they write down more, they're more engaged. And so it's one of those things where that clicker can help both the ones who are not there to kind of come back in and the ones who are there to feel like they're participating. So, all right, so this was, I asked this yesterday to my class. I said, we canceled spring break at UW Eau Claire. How are you feeling? And it was a way for me to just get something out of them and then start that conversation. You know, one of the things I thought about was I'm from Minnesota, and so the trial, there's a big trial coming up, and because I know that some students are stressed and very ingrained in that idea that they need to do more, I can bring that up in a very easy way of, how are you feeling about X? And it starts a conversation where everyone has the voice to start that conversation, and then maybe that teases out and allows other people to just sort of respond. So, all right, I'm gonna stop that and close it because we don't need that anymore. All right, and just to know, if you're new to asking questions like this, I started with 3 questions a day, and I've kind of evolved from there. But one of the things that people use it for is, what were they supposed to get from the last lecture? First 3 questions of the day are sort of review. You can get questions from so many different places. Oftentimes you'll have a test bank, or there's questions in the back of a chapter that ask certain things that you want to just, hey, that's a good question. If you search iClicker questions online and then put in your discipline, you'll probably get scores of them. And there's also questions on the fly, which basically I could just say, I'm going to do this where I'm going to start, and it's going to be numeric on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being great and 1 being poor. How am I doing so far? So I just made up that question right now. So 1 to 10, and I'm sending that out there. If you're in class, how many times have you kind of thought to yourself, oh, this would be a great question? You ask it, and then that one person answers it immediately. Well, this way you stop for a second. Usually I'd stop talking, but I know how important our time is, so I don't want to keep you too long. But right now, I'm getting feedback from all of you, and I'm not going to show this feedback because I'm a little scared, but it's this idea that this is an easy way to have your students engaged in the material as you're going. And I think, as an instructor, it has really changed how I see my students. If I say gravity is negative 9.8 meters per second squared, always, and then I ask a question, I throw a ball up in the air, and at the very top, what happens? What's the acceleration at the very top? Well, I just told them that it's negative 9.8 meters per second squared because it's always that. And I will get 80% of the people saying that the acceleration is 0. And so even if you tell them something, they're not going to get it until they process and play with it. And so oftentimes when you do the concept question, concept question, concept question, they're going to retain more at the end of that lecture than if you just talk the entire time. So I'm going to hide that and look at that later, just to see how you guys feel. All right, so one last thing is when oh geez, how many people have ever, I could ask a question right now. How many people, when a slide comes up for the first time and you see the glaring error, you think, oh my God. So how have I evolved over the years? My scoring for the semester, this semester it's different. I used to have that they'd have 10% for getting something right. Threw that out the window this semester because I just need them to be there. I've really let technology do some of the lifting instead of me foisting upon myself as the only conduit of great information. Now things like those videos that they get asynchronously. When I do a problem in class that's complex, I say to everyone, if you think that you need this again, let me know, and I'll put it on one of those videos and they can watch it later. There's also asynchronous assignments. And so if you come back in about 15 minutes, I'll have uploaded a slide stack that has a question. So you can actually have multiple choice questions where you just have to drop a PDF file into the program, and it will make a quiz for you. And for me, what I do is I upload a question slide, and then the next slide is the answer slide, because that way when they're going through, they're actually learning from the material rather than just, did I get it right or wrong? Because oftentimes when you get it wrong, it's really frustrating if you don't know how to get to that right answer. And so I've looked at the technology and how they're doing things. iClicker came up with something that said, we're going to allow you to do multiple choice quizzes, and they call them assignments. And for me, it was, I'm going to use it very differently. I'm going to use it as a place for students to learn with the question and the answer already there and not give them any credit. And what I've seen is that the students right before a test will go on, and I have like 30 questions or 40 questions stacked up, and they just go through them and they learn a lot that way. So this evolution of technology is looking at the technology and then really thinking, how can it help you and how can it help the students? So thank you. If you have any questions, obviously we'll go over some right now, but if you ever have a question about iClicker, feel free to email me. My email's there on the screen. So Lindsay, do you have any questions from our wonderfully interactive students?
Yeah, we have a few questions that have come through. So, in your introduction, it was noted that you've been using iClicker for a long time. Like, how often do you reevaluate different technologies in your classrooms and kind of look at, what's working to make sure you have the minimum amount of technology for the maximum kind of
right.
results?
Homework systems, we'll talk about those. I have, in the past 10 years, used 4 different online homework systems. And each of them has some great features, and some of them are horrible and I'll never use again. And it's one of those things where maybe I feel like I'm one of the people in my department. I have a department of 10 who kind of, this is my niche now, is I go off and I evaluate things. And then we do have a Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning on campus. And at the beginning of every semester, we actually give talks about what we've learned about technology. And so we share a lot of that information, and that really has allowed me to view critically new pieces of material. And you know how many, you're inundated with all of these things. So maybe reaching out to somebody who's used it rather than the sales rep is going to be a better way for you to evaluate that. But I do that a lot because I don't want to be that dinosaur still using chalk. Although I love it. I love chalk, and I actually still teach with it when we're in a room with a chalkboard. So.
Sorry, I had muted myself. So another question, there's a couple of folks asking about, like, what about built-in tools that are like built into, your video conferencing system? Why would you use iClicker over those?
Oh, so the ease of getting things out of those is more difficult. And at least from what I've seen is I was not able to easily get the feedback. Now, it's because the things that I am interested in are, I need to know exactly who the person is. I want to be, like for attendance, I can go in and it's a 3-minute process for me to log into the iClicker site, go to my attendance, and scroll through 50 people to see who do I need to email. So one of the things is when you talk about making it cheap versus easy, there's always that trifecta. There's 3 things you have to look at, but this is a really simple tool that costs money, that gives you the ease of use and time savings. And for that, I am very careful with students' money, but I also have to think about the how it comes out in the end. And that is one of the things that iClicker is really robust and has great interaction. And so when you go back to that slide, those yellow arrows to me are critical, because it used to be you would have to download something and then sort it in the right order and then match it up with some username on D2L and then upload it. And just to get scores in would take, a half hour. And in this case, it's one click and it works for me. So when we were talking about ease of use, oftentimes what we need out of it comes from more robust technology and something that's been around longer. Now, if you're just asking questions and you're looking at it in a different way, those types of systems do work. So it is a matter of thinking, what do you need out of it? And for me, it really is understanding the attendance, understanding how well they're doing, whether they're getting questions right or wrong, and then having that ease of use.
Okay, great. Hopefully that answered that question. So there's another question. This is kind of pointing to the overall time issue. This person is saying, it takes me 2 hours every day to read and answer all of my work emails from students and admins. In a recent webinar that this person attended on time management, the presenter stated that it should all be able to be done in 15 minutes. And I'm alone in this large discrepancy. So I guess the question is to you, Matt, is like, how do you, balance the rest of your admin work and responding to students with, your in-class prep as well?
I think that is one of the very first question I ask every day is, what questions do you have? Or do you have a question? And they either say no, which 80 to 90% of the people just type in no because they're there, but they know that they're supposed to answer every question. And I give them full credit for answering 75% of the questions, so I don't care. But in that small space, at least for students, that is the time that they can come to me very easily. The other thing that I've been doing this semester for the first time is I'm using a discussion board where the discussion for homework is I make a discussion for the homework, and then I put every hint that I've given to any student in the header, in the top. And so if a student wants to know about homework or an assignment, they have to actually ask it within the Canvas page, and then the answer is there for everyone. So that's one of the things that trying to crowdsource and put all of that stuff into one place, especially for students, has really helped my ability to not have as many single emails, and I get more global asks on the Canvas site. So that's actually really helped. So between asking the question, what questions do you have, and then I answer them to everyone in the class immediately, and having discussion boards that I answer one person's question for everyone has really helped minimize that traffic in my my inbox. But yes, the bane of our existence, isn't it?
Okay, thank you for answering that. Another couple of questions are coming through. You guys keep sending them. These are great. Someone is asking, how have your students reacted to using iClicker? Have you done any research on survey questions about the student experience? How have you changed as a teacher because of your iClicker use?
That's funny, because I had a slide and I don't dare go find it, but I have a pie chart that I ask at the end of every semester what went well and what could be improved. And those are just two really vague questions to ask my students. And I tell them every semester I change something based on what you reply. And one of the things that they always say that they like is that interaction And even last semester, I could only have a third of my class in person. I had 90 kids, so 30 of them could show up, and I was maybe getting 15 to show up, and the 70 are online. But they still said that answering those questions in real time was helpful because it allowed them to stop. Now, one of the things that teachers are bad at, and I have not modeled this very well, is when you ask a question, just let them process for a minute. That's a big one. Even if they immediately are starting to come in, let them process, let the slow stragglers kind of come in, because the people who got it right the first time sometimes start trying to explain it to the people around them. And my big hope is that next semester, when we're back in person, we can have a little bit more of that interaction in the classroom. But they have always cited this as something they really like, and the online homework systems as stuff that they don't like nearly as well. And I get that because they are cumbersome and tricky to make make it so that the student is learning. So, but if you have questions about physics online homework systems, shoot me an email. I got opinions. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. Okay, a couple more questions. Okay, again, kind of what we were saying about different built-in polling functionality within video conferencing systems. There's another question around like some of what you described can be done with a Google form. Have you used those, and what would be the advantage of iClicker over those?
Well, the advantage of Google Form is all the students, obviously have access. They're longer places to have their answers go in. But if you are going to there's a theory out there about learning where instead of doing teach, 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 test, it's teach, test, test, test. And when you think about that, that's what the iClicker does well, is you ask them the question and they're having to answer very quickly. And I think multiple choice questions are a way to cover a lot of ground in a class. So you get this wide breadth. And when students don't like multiple choice questions, it's usually because they're well written. Because there's that one question that sounds kind of right, and you know that because you're a great teacher. You've seen that answer, and that's their misconception. So getting that really quick feedback for those short questions is great. But it depends on what you're doing. So if we go back to that, that slide of figure out what you need your class to be doing, and then choose the appropriate software. Now for iClicker, it floats here on the top. When I ask that question, if I ask this question right now, it says, thank you for your time to Metro Technology. That gets sent to you. I could have this as a blank screen. I could pull up a Word document and send that out. So it really depends on what you're going to do with those answers. And for me, the idea is, are they getting it in real time so I can change my lecture to model that? And who is the struggling student or those students who aren't showing up? So it really goes back to, yes, there's a lot of technology out there, but this finding the one that's going to work for you really depends on how you teach and how you want to evolve your teaching into something that the students buy into.
Okay, great. Another question, and feel free to send along any more. I know we're getting close to time. Have you had any issues with using iClicker slowing down the amount of content that you can get through in a term? So are the questions adding to the time in class? Similar question, how have you, or have you had to, defend the use of iClickers in the classroom to fellow colleagues or faculty who disagree with the movement away from a traditional lecture? So kind of two different questions there.
Well, under my breath, I would say Luddite. I'm really blessed to be here at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. As I said, I came here over 20 years ago, and I had just came out of a postdoc where I had somebody who was very abusive to me. They were bullying me. They said I would never amount to anything. And I came into a department that wanted me to succeed and didn't want me to be like them. And I hate to say this to people who are in departments that don't allow you to be you, but there are so many different ways to succeed in teaching. And understanding what you're trying to do in getting that to work is really empowering. And for the people who say, nope, you should be doing it this way, they need to understand that teaching is a creative endeavor. The content, like in physics, is not, but we can make it come alive in very different ways. The guy who's right next to me, his way of teaching is loud and excited, and you can hear him down the hallway when he's teaching, and I love that. And his students do too, but that's not me. So I do it in a different way, and we're both really successful. So to that, I would say find CETL or a teaching and learning center that supports what you do and has some articles that you might want to pass on to other people, and show that you being engaged and excited is really going to be better for the students in any way that you teach. Now for the time and content thing, we actually have had those conversations continually. And what we do is we think about the idea of teaching kids to learn better. And so in a book where you have 5 sections to a chapter, I used to plow through 5 sections in 4 lectures, and that was how it was done. And now I try to show them the intricacies of learning and put a little bit more on them. So say, we're going to go over those first 3 chapters, and then here's what I want you to do for the ones that we're not going to cover as much in class, but here's the really important part. So that's the kind of thing that that we have talked about, which is we'd rather do less total content in the lecture itself, but make sure that what we're doing in class helps them understand both the learning process and getting the fundamentals down. Because we know that if you don't get a fundamental down in any class, I can think about art or economics, or even in English, if you're not getting a fundamental of what the class is about, you're not going to be able to get to that next step. And I think of Bloom's taxonomy in that sort of response too. So.
Okay, great. We've got about 10 minutes left on the hour, so we've got a few more questions. How do you deal with technical problems during a live class? That's a fun one.
It's that's me knocking on wood again. I have had, I've been using these things for 15 years, and how many lectures does that cover? And I think only 3 times in 15 years have I not been able to use the software. So how do I deal with it? The software that I use, PowerPoint and iClicker, has been very robust, and it works well. I believe in myself as a teacher. And I think that's another thing that we all have to realize is, especially in this time where we've all had to pivot, think of how great you've been to change how you've taught, and realize that if something goes wrong, don't tell the kids that it's wrong. Tell them it's, hey, we're going to do something a little different. And I know that's really tough because when you're inside, you're sort of terrified of what's going to happen next. Most teachers have something in their quiver that they can come up with if the technology is not working well. And that's where, sometimes, I can think back where one time it was just the computer wouldn't start. So I just wrote a problem on the board, and I said, start this problem, see how you're going to do it, discuss it with your neighbors, as I waited for the computer, which took 7 minutes to start up. So there's ways around that. Don't rely on technology to do everything, because as an educator, I know you have more in you.
Okay,
Those
great.
are my inspiring words for the day.
Okay, we've got let's say this is the last question, because then we'll wrap up. Do you use the iClicker system to engage students outside the classroom?
So two answers. Yes, my students who are wherever they are watching my hybrid synchronous lectures are engaging. Outside, there's the ability to make up these assignments. And as I said, I'll make sure that Lindsay sees this and sends out a reminder to everyone. But just you can actually have an assignment where they can go through some multiple choice questions or target questions or short answer questions asynchronously. So it could be that in between your lectures, you just quickly throw up some questions, and then you know what they know before they get to class. It's one of these methods that they used to call just-in-time teaching, where they're answering something right before you start, you see how they've done, and then you know what to concentrate on for that lecture. So that's the way that I use it outside of the classroom. Lindsay, am I missing anything on how it could be used outside of that?
No, that's it. It's just we also have the built-in study tools that are in the app.
Oh, right.
So whether you're on web or on the app, if you back out of today's current session, click leave, and you can just click to study tools at the bottom. And any question that Matt asked during class, quote unquote, the webinar today, will show up there. So that's the same thing for students. Students will leave with a copy of every single question you ask in class and can use that. Matt, I'm not sure how much you use that in your own classroom.
I actually give them the opportunity, or I tell them about using that, that all the questions are there. So they like that. You know, there's obviously, you know, I would say 20% of the people use the study tools like that. The other thing I just did is I sent out a question, but it wasn't a question. I wanted you to have that screenshot of my name and email. So I just took a screenshot of it by starting and stopping the poll, and you now have that. So that's another simple way to get something into their hands very easily, where they're scribbling stuff down and you think, wow, there's too much on here. Why don't I just send that out to them easily? You can just take that screenshot by starting and stopping your poll.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. I don't see any more questions. We got to everything. But if you do have further questions, please do feel free to email Matt. You can also email us at email@iclicker.com. I'm putting that in the chat if you have any other questions. Also, a couple of people had asked about, you know, seeing iClicker a little bit more closely or talking to somebody about, you know, you can also contact us to talk about different ways to use, you know, active learning in your classroom, not, you know, just using the system. You can go to iclicker.com. There's a little button for demos and trainings at the bottom. You can click on that. We have wonderful humans there that have lots of time blocked out and would be happy to talk to you. We do try to make those sessions as personal as possible. So if you have a ton of questions, you can, you know, get through whatever you need to by talking to our demo and training people. So I believe that's all I have. This recording will go out within a day or two. Feel free to share it with your colleagues if you want, and you'll have a copy of Matt's slides as well. But that is all I have. Thank you guys so much for joining and for your really great questions. And Matt, thank you for taking the time to share your expertise with us today. It was really helpful.
Yes, thank you. I always appreciate having the opportunity to think through what I do for a living. So
great. All right. All right, everyone. Have a great week, and we hope to see you soon on another webinar.